Hi, I'm Tony Schrader, Chairman of the Putnam County Republican Party. We're down here in Columbus visiting with some of our dear friends. In this case, with Senator Rob McColley, who is now the Majority Whip in the Ohio Senate. You got moved up since the last session.
I did. I must be doing something right.
You are doing something right. The best thing you did was choose to run for office from the 1st Senate District because we love you and you're doing a great job for us. So we're delighted to be here.
Well, I'm just fortunate enough to be in conservative Northwest Ohio, where you can speak your conservative conscience, you can lead with a conservative belief set, and you can get a lot of good things done from there.
Well, and the thing is, though, you fit your district so well besides. One of the things I mentioned in a recent post about a piece of legislation we're going to talk about is that people will sometimes come to me and say, those politicians are all alike. And I'll say, you need to meet Senator McColley, and you'll feel differently after. So keep up the good work.
Thank you.
And we're delighted to have it. We wanted to talk to you a little bit about today about a piece of legislation you co-authored and which has now passed the Ohio Senate that people in Putnam County and throughout Northwest Ohio are very interested in knowing more about. Senate Bill 22. Fill us in on what it's all about.
Sure. So, I mean, to give a little bit of history, this dates back into even last June, I believe, when I, along with Senator Christina Rogner, introduced Senate Bill 311, which many people might be familiar with, that ended up being the vehicle for some checks and balances, restoration of natural separation of powers type of discussion last General Assembly. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get it done. So Senate Bill 22 is the next iteration of that, and it's something that I promised my constituents I would not drop the issue. And I've been supported by new Senate President Matt Huffman in that endeavor to let's get it done, get it out of the Senate quickly. It's already out of the Senate. So let me explain how the bill would work. So in essence, you have these declarations of emergency, the state of emergency that a governor can declare in pretty much most any state. Mm-hmm. And that's to allow for a governor or a chief executive in any circumstance to be able to react quickly and to have the flexibility they need during a time of true emergency. But one thing to be aware of is most states have checks and balances on that, and the reason being is that during a time of emergency, an immense amount of power is transferred to the executive branch, and it's power that would be traditionally reserved for the legislative branch. Mm-hmm. The ability to make laws, the ability to do things that have the full force and effect of the law and the Constitution behind them. And most states, we found, have a few things. They have durational limits on them, where they can only last for so long without legislative approval to go beyond that duration. And they also have other checks and balances, which allows the legislature, in many cases in other states, to actually terminate a state of emergency. And that's really something that is in response to the fact of what I said earlier. There's an immense amount of power that's going over to the executive branch. It's not meant to be indefinite, and it's not meant to be unchecked.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, Ohio has a situation where there are no time limits placed on states of emergency, and the checks and balances, even on the orders and rules that would come out during that state of emergency, are not there either. And so Ohio is, I would say, one of the worst states in the nation as it concerns checks and balances and preservation of the natural separation of power during times of emergency. So Senate Bill 22 is aimed at fixing that, and it does it through a variety of ways. Number one, it goes to these states of emergency and says, what I like to say, 30, 90, 60, okay? After 30 days after the state of emergency is declared, Senate Bill 22 would allow the legislature to rescind that state of emergency. That gives the governor or whoever it is enough time to be able to assess the situation and, frankly, involve the legislature.
At that point, right.
And the governor has the ability to call an emergency session of the legislature and ask the legislature for authority or different ways to do things. After 90 days, it automatically expires. And then going forward, the legislature, if it felt it was appropriate, could extend the emergency in 60-day intervals. And some people might be saying, well, why would that be appropriate? Why would you continually extend the state of emergency? It's because in some cases, emergencies are also tied to the ability to draw down federal dollars. And so there are situations during a disaster, for example, where you are able to pull down federal relief money that you have to have a state of emergency declared in order to be able to do that. So there are circumstances where it would need to be extended. But under the bill, the legislature would have to be the body that would continuously extend it in recognition of the fact that there is an immense power being granted to the executive branch. One thing to be clear about that is worth noting, that in the uncodified section of Senate Bill 22, the current state of emergency would expire 30 days after its effective date. So we have that in the bill. And then aside from the actual state of emergency, when a governor declares an emergency, it authorizes the governor and the executive branch to issue rules and orders, as we've seen throughout this the last year, that do not have to go through the normal due process, do not have to go through the normal approval process. They take effect immediately, which of course has been the cause of some heartburn for a lot of folks over the past year. The bill, as it's constructed, would allow 10 days after the emergency has begun, the legislature would have the ability to rescind any order issued by any agency pursuant to the emergency after 10 days. And that would then allow us to be able to go in and say, look, even if we think the state of emergency should remain in place, this order goes too far, or we think this order should be in the form of legislation to allow for the normal process to take place and to respect the natural separation of powers between the branches, and it would allow the legislature to rescind that order by a simple majority vote in both chambers. And so it really is restoring accountability and checks and balances back into the process and the natural separation of powers, because my feeling is, whether you think the governor and the health director have done an excellent job or you think they have done a poor job, this is how government is supposed to work. The three branches are supposed to be co-equal. They're supposed to have checks and balances on each other to respect that, like I said, that natural separation of powers, because if we don't respect that natural separation of powers, we are creating a disastrous precedent for what would go on in the future. And for anybody who may feel like, well, that's not true, I would just say this. Imagine, if you will, the one politician that you can think of, Republican or Democrat, who you would least like making those types of decisions with unfettered and on an indefinite basis. And imagine those decisions in the legislature not having the ability to rescind or exercise any sort of checks and balances on that. That's very well what could happen in the future. And so we need to be mindful that this isn't just a solution for now. This is a solution going forward as well.
In essence, you're fixing an area of Ohio law that was written a long time ago, nearly a century ago, is that right, I think, to address an epidemic of some other type of nature. I mean, it was not, at the time that was done, was not intended to be used, in my opinion, I think the opinion of a lot of people, the way it's being used now. And you're simply restoring the legislature's authority in the first place to have involvement in the process. I've always believed, and I think you share that, the best government is the government that's closest to the people. You're responsive to the members or the people that are in your district. Representatives are responsible to the people that live within their own districts. They should have a say in what's happening to their voting residents.
Absolutely.
And I think this is the key that comes about with SB 22. That's already passed the Ohio Senate. It's on the floor of the House and likely to pass the House, it sounds like, maybe.
So today, kind of letting everybody behind the curtain, today is Wednesday, March 3rd. It's sitting over in the House. We actually have sponsor testimony over in the House today on Senate Bill 22. We are in active discussions with members of the House to try and come up with a final agreed upon version that the House will pass hopefully pretty quickly after we come up with that agreed upon version. And then after that, the House will vote on it. It will go over to the Senate. The Senate will concur with the changes in a simple floor vote. And after that floor vote, the governor will then have 10 days to either sign or veto it. The governor, I believe, has stated publicly that he will veto it, unfortunately. And I think we've heard pretty loud and clear, at least from our Senate president, that he will put it up for a veto override vote immediately, as soon as we can, after the governor has officially vetoed it. And I think that's important, because when you look at it, I kind of look at it this way, this is in many ways standing up for the legislative branch and trying to restore the legislative branch's role in the government of the state of Ohio. And so if you're willing to vote for it on the floor, which this bill passed with unanimous Republican support on the floor of the Senate, 25 Republican votes, we only need 20 to override a veto in the Senate. If you're willing to vote for it on the floor, but you're not willing to vote for it for an override, then you are willfully ceding your authority to the legislative branch and basically saying your veto power trumps my ability, and your check on us through your veto power trumps my ability to check on you and override your veto.
Right.
So you're willfully giving them your legislative authority or putting it on unequal footing at the least. And to me, I just think that's unacceptable. We need to be a unified party. We need to be a unified legislature going forward, but I anticipate that we will be, and this thing will see a pretty swift override.
That's good. And, you know, at the stage that we're at in this situation already, I think, I feel confident in saying that most people would hope that the governor would not veto this legislation, but that if he does, that it would be appropriate for the General Assembly to carry out its role and override it. So, and get us to that point. So we're a little short on time today. We've got other opportunities we'll have to talk with you again. We wanted to give an update to the voters of Putnam County and all of Northwest Ohio. Thanks so much for giving us the time today. We really appreciate it.
Happy to do it. I always love being on GOPTV to the people of Putnam County.
That's great.
The great folks down in Putnam County who've been so good to me, who've welcomed me with open arms since I started running for the House way back in 2013. And so always glad to meet with you guys.
It's a delight to have you on again. So thanks, Senator.
Yep,
appreciate it. We'll see you next time.